All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights. This is the only show absolutely dedicated to helping you learn both the technical and non-technical aspects of the investment banking process. My name is Alex Mason. I'm your host, and how you doing? Hope you're doing amazing, having a great day this beautiful Tuesday morning. We're in the middle of the summer now, and just excited for all of y'all. If you're in an internship right now, keep going, keep pushing, do your absolute best work. If you're in the middle of recruiting or just thinking about getting going with recruiting, good luck, and I'm here for you. So I want to talk to you today about the cash conversion cycle. That's a concept I've been thinking about recently, just thinking about working capital. Had a listener ask me about working capital a week or so ago. And so it was on my mind this morning when I woke up and thought about recording an episode for y'all. Still on vacation, so the not in the studio right now, but wanted to give you something nonetheless via audio, just like the old days. So in terms of what working capital is, remember, this is the amount of money that's tied up in the business. You can't just have a business with absolutely no capital in it. It needs to have some kind of assets to run. So that's why if you have a transaction like an M&A transaction and one business is being sold from one party to another, you have to assume in your modeling that there's a certain amount of cash left inside the business and a certain amount of assets left inside the business because you need that to run. So more specifically, there's an equation that I want to share with you today, and it's the cash conversion cycle or the funding gap equation. And it's very simple. There's only 3 variables. So if you're looking for the funding gap of a business, specifically in terms of number of days of funding that's required for business, it is inventory days plus receivable days minus payable days. So your funding gap equals inventory days plus receivable days minus payable days. Now let's talk about what each of those actually mean. So in terms of inventory days, remember what inventory is, right? It's shows up as an asset, right, on the balance sheet, but it affects your cost of goods sold, which is on your income statement. Inventory days, this is the number of days that a company holds inventory. So imagine if you're a business and you're a shoe factory, you get different materials from suppliers, you're putting them together, you've completed making the shoe and you put it on a shelf somewhere and you're waiting to sell it. So that's inventory. You've completed creating the product but it's still in possession of the company, and that's an asset. So the more inventory that a business has, the more funding is required, right? Because you need capital to create that thing, and you're not getting any money yet. You haven't actually sold it to collect any sort of cash or revenue from customers. So the way that you calculate inventory days is your average inventory. You could just look at the inventory on the balance sheet in the financial statements, divide it by your cost of goods sold, and then you're going to take that number and multiply it by 365. So 365, number of days in the year. So basically what we're doing with this equation, we're looking at the percentage of our cost of goods sold in a period that exists as inventory, because that tells us how much we're converting what we're creating into actual sales, right? Because remember, inventory that is sold becomes cost of goods sold. That's where cost of goods sold comes from. So imagine this shoe factory where you make this shoe, it now exists as inventory, and then you sell it in a certain period. Well, you had a certain amount of cost going into creating the inventory. So that's how you calculate inventory days. Inventory divided by your COGS multiplied by 365. Okay? So that's the number of days that your inventory is held by the company. The next part of this equation is your receivable days. So your receivable days, this is the number of days it takes to collect payments from customers. So remember that, especially in accrual accounting, when a business sells something, you don't just get the money right away. Most sales are made on credit of some kind. And so there's actual time that exists between the time that the sale is made and the time that the business collects the cash. And this works both ways, but let's first talk about the direction of you being the business and collecting money from a customer. So the way that you calculate this is you just look at accounts receivable. So just like we looked at inventory on the balance sheet for inventory days, we're looking at accounts receivable on the balance sheet for receivable days. So take your accounts receivable, and instead of dividing by COGS, we're going to divide by our revenue. So accounts receivable divided by revenue, multiply that by 365. That's the number of days it takes to collect customer payments. Does that make sense? And the reason that we're using that ratio is because if there's a certain percentage of our sales that is basically going to come later, right? It's indicating that it's taking time for customers to pay us, or more specifically, it's taking time for us to be able to recognize that revenue. So receivable days equals accounts receivable divided by sales. And specifically, you could break it down further to the number of sales on credit, but just for simplification, in order to remember it, accounts receivable divided by sales multiplied by 365. And again, we're multiplying by 365 to get the number of days. So receivable days, the number of days to collect customer payments. Now, this third piece of the equation, this is kind of the flip side. So if receivable days is the number of days it takes to collect customer payments, payable days is, remember, view it from the mindset of as if you're the business owner. Payable days is the number of days it takes to pay suppliers. So just like there's a delay between when customers pay a business, there's a delay between when a business pays its suppliers. And this is kind of the opposite. So instead of looking at accounts receivable, now we're looking at accounts payable. And remember, this also falls on the balance sheet, right? Current assets versus current liabilities. So your accounts payable, we're going to divide that by our cost of goods sold. Now, Alex, why are we dividing by cost of goods sold instead of dividing by sales in this case? Well, remember, what is the business doing? It's paying suppliers. And what do we pay suppliers for? We pay it because we're creating inventory and ultimately cost of goods sold. So that's why we divide accounts payable by cost of goods sold. Then we multiply that by 365, and that gets you your payable days, or days payable. So days payable equals accounts payable divided by cost of goods sold times 365. Your inventory days are your inventory divided by COGS times 365. And your receivable days are your accounts receivable divided by your sales times 365. So now that you know how to calculate each of those three things, you can look at the funding gap, or the number of days of funding that a business needs in order to operate normally, right? So your working capital cycle is defined again as your inventory days plus your receivable days minus your payable days. So inventory days plus receivable days minus payable days. Do you see why we're adding inventory and receivable and subtracting out payable? Well, inventory plus receivable, this is like how much time the business needs to basically cover those costs. So it's got a certain amount of costs related to its inventory and a certain amount of costs related to accounts receivable. Like, it needs time before it collects that money from customers, and it needs time before it can convert that inventory into sales via cost of goods sold. So that's like a funding deficit, you could say. And then The surplus is going to come on the other end when the business is taking time to pay suppliers. So that's why we're subtracting that last part out. So if the payable days, if you've got great terms with your suppliers and you can pay them 6 months from now, but you've only got a month worth of inventory days and another month worth of receivable days, then you're in a great position because after just 2 months, you're going to have the cash to cover all of the costs needed in order to pay your suppliers, even though you don't owe them money yet. So that's why we're subtracting that last piece. So just to recap, as we wrap this up, for the working capital cycle, your funding gap is equivalent to inventory days plus receivable days minus payable days. And that's it. So that's what I got for you today. I mean, it's one of those accounting concepts that I hadn't thought about in a while. And, I haven't really covered some of these nitty gritty technical topics in a while on the show. And so I want to do a little bit more of that. I think it's a good thing to stay sharp. And I think it's a good thing for you, especially if you're in the beginning of your journey or in the middle of your journey. You got to know these accounting things. So that's what I got. Hope you're doing amazing. I'm going to enjoy these last couple days of vacation. I literally start full time as an investment banker next week, which is kind of surreal. But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for your support, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hey, I hope your summer is off to a great start. I'm super excited to start my role in investment banking. And I know a lot of you are actually already in banking, looking to move into the buy side. Well, my friend Larry, who I had on the show a few months ago, has done just that. He's put together a ton of resources for you, including different cases, how to prepare for different cases, the emails of headhunters, what to say to them, all of the contacts, all in one place. Now, this is super critical because on-cycle recruiting for a lot of the major funds is in the summer. So you want to get on this soon if you're thinking about recruiting right now. So check the link in the description. You'll get 10% off by mentioning the code IBI, and good luck in your recruiting.